For this special podcast episode, I spoke with Gönül Düzer, who is a labor activist, math teacher, and a board member of the Kurdish Cultural Center in Chicago. Gönül was willing to take the time to speak on the current Turkish invasion of Northeast Syria, some history that would be useful to keep in mind when considering current events in this region, the complex tensions of being an anti-imperialist in these times, and about the Global Day of Action on this Saturday, October 12th, in defense of Rojava and against this current invasion into Northeast Syria, which has been brought about by actions by the U.S. and many, many more topics. She also talks about Rojava, the role that this region plays in the area, and some ideas about how to get involved against the current invasion. The audio quality for this podcast special is a bit low, so I recommend listening in a quiet place with headphones if you can manage that. We will be airing a version of this episode on Sunday, the day after the Global Day of Action, so you won't hear from us that day via this platform, but we will be back in your podcast feed next Sunday with more content. A content warning is applicable for this episode. Gönül describes many brutal actions on the part of Daesh or ISIS, including rape and sexual assault. The descriptions are not graphic, but this may be difficult to engage with, so just take care of you. All right, so we are recording now. It's recording fine, and so thank you so much for agreeing to come onto the show. Would you begin by introducing yourself for listeners' name, pronouns, pseudonym, whatever you like, and talk a bit about yourself and what you do?
Thank you for creating that platform, first of all, for us to talk, because we need to reach as many people as possible in a very short time. This is Gönül Düzer. Currently, I'm in Chicago. I'm originally from Dersim, but I grew up in Istanbul. Both cities are in Turkish border right now, but Dersim is part of Kurdistan. I worked as a waitress, labor organizer, and I did some other stuff before, but last 3 years I have been a math teacher in special education.
So we are here to talk about we're in a moment right now of shifting of power structures in northern Syria. Would you talk about what is happening in the region currently and what is some background that might be helpful for listeners to understand what's going on?
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. It's like very, very critical moment for the region. Trump took a step and said that they're going to bring all the troops back from the region, which have been there at the beginning they said it was for 30 days, but they stayed there for years. So we knew that what the U.S. government is saying and doing not necessarily has to be always the reality there. That's why we also think that maybe this actions can change the reality and the troops will stay there for a while, at least for creating a stable Rojava against the threat from ISIS and the threat from Turkey, including the problems with the regime with Syria. So there has been a war for almost a decade that caused millions of people to change their cities, maybe in the country that they were in, or they needed to change the country or the region totally to find a safer place because of the ongoing war there. The Islamic State reality has been created by several other figures in the region too, and they have been trying to create a regime there that was based on their own norms of Islam. So beheading people, not giving any rights to women, trying to make everyone Muslim, genocides to people who are in the different sects of Islam or who are not Muslim. And Rojava has been there for a couple of years. It's the autonomous region on the northern side of Syria. So Kurds are actually the biggest ethnic group that doesn't have a country in the world now. In Turkey, it's like more than 20 million people. Of course, these numbers are debatable, by the way, because there have been ongoing assimilation policies. People were asked to change the location from their hometowns. They were asked to move to the different parts of the country that they were in. In the early 20th century, the Kurds were put into 4 different countries, namely Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. Most of them are in Turkey now, more than 20 million people. My numbers can be wrong, but I believe it's less than 5 million living in Syria. It's a bit more than that living in Iraq, and less than 3 million, I believe, or around that living in Iran too. So Rojava got established a couple of years ago on the north side of Syria as an autonomous region, who have been fighting against ISIS for years, and U.S. by pulling the soldiers back. This is creating like a power gap there that actually Turkey wants to fill really fast. The first bombing started today, so this is our biggest concern, what is going to happen to the whole region after the U.S. pulling the soldiers back. We know that it's not the U.S. is protecting those people there, but it's one of the reliefs for the people there that they are feeling, okay, because of the U.S., the Turks are not going to attack us soon because their soldiers are here too.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a very complicated situation, and one that's difficult to go into just given a little bit of time. But I'm wondering if you would speak a little bit more about Rojava. And you mentioned it a little bit in your previous answer, but what role has Rojava been playing in the region thus far, specifically for Kurdish folks who have been made to adopt refugee status because of wars and anything else that comes to mind?
Sure, yeah. That's actually a very key thing about the refugees of the war. So Rojava is the Kurdish region of Syria, as I said before. It means where the sun sets, so it's west. It literally means west in Kurdish. There are 3 cantons there, Afrin, Kobane, and Cizre, and we probably remember Kobane from the Kobane resistance from 2014, September. More than 11,000 SDC, Syrian Democratic Forces people died there. They were killed there while they were fighting against ISIS. Rojava is critically important in the whole Middle East, being honest. For me, especially because of the gender revolution that they are trying to bring. Rojava, the region Rojava was created with the ideas of equality for women, bringing more power to women, so empowering women and children, bringing more human rights to the region, bringing more quality education. Of course, when we are thinking about what is happening there, the imminent threats, of course, these are the long-term plans, and also very ecological understanding of a life, a sustainable economic growth instead of only economic growth. I believe the women empowerment was the biggest part of this, including also the multi-ethnic representation, because there are not just Kurdish people who are living in Rojava. Actually, currently, the demographic of Rojava has been trying to change by the Turkish actions there too. So there are Arabs, there are Assyrians, and there are so many different people who have been living historically in that region, who are still currently living in Rojava territory, and they have the representation in the political systems there too. Coming back to the women issue there, the women empowerment has been one of the key figures of Kurdish movement for the last decade, together with the economic growth, being honest, because we realize that without empowering our women, we are not going to come anywhere. So, for instance, there was the co-presidency system in one of the books, for instance, I remember reading about Rojava. After the revolution, the women started to have like more divorce, like they are dealing with their issues in the small groups that they are creating. Like I saw so many interviews with the women there who were talking much more empowered than most of the women in my age who are feeling like self-sufficient, who got education, who got all the things that the Western hemisphere is giving to us. That I realized that women there were both understanding and experiencing and living a life that was based on women empowerment and solidarity among the women too. So this is actually the picture of Rojava when I'm looking back there. That is why I believe an action, like any action that we are doing right now, is very critical. So this is like what happened in what was in Spain, what was in Paris Commune and all the other places that we remember as the life-turning events for any community that can create a society that we want. I don't know how to define we, but I believe most of us who are listening to this have a very, very similar understanding about what kind of life do we want. A more equality-based, women and children first, and giving rights to disabled people, representation from different ethnic groups and everything else. So that is why what's happening to Rojava is very critical right now. Coming back to your original question about what about the refugees there, why they are important. They are actually very critically important, and I want to give a resource name to the people who might have chance. It would be great if they can have a look. It's from Rojava Information Center. The name of the template is called, it's not a template, it's kind of like 44-page long report on bringing ISIS to justice towards an international tribunal in Northeast Syria. So based on this publication in 2019, there are over thousands of refugees from Iraq, from Syria, who are living in the different refugee camps in Rojava right now. We know that the ISIS turmoil, the active war is over. Actually, there are things going on. I heard some news today, so maybe it's not the best thing to say that it's over, but the big actual war has ended. However, what happened to those people and what happened to those fighters, the people who were affiliated with ISIS, not necessarily direct fighters, or the people who came to join ISIS from abroad, from foreign countries, or the women who got married with those ISIS fighters, or the children who got born from those marriages, or the children who were brought from different countries by their parents to be part of ISIS. Those, we are talking about tens of thousands of people right now. We are talking about tens of thousands of people whose mind has been abused and dirtied for years, that they believe that they can kill a non-Muslim person for the sake of Islam, that the women are not equal to men, that beheading people because they are from different religions, raping women, using them as sex slaves, right? They believe that those things are okay and they are their rights, as long as they are fighting for the Islamic State. In the report that I have now, I want to read a small chart actually. It says, the majority of women and children have been detained in Hol camp, a refugee camp in Hasakah region of Northeast Syria. The arrival of thousands of women and children from the last ISIS stronghold pushed the refugee camp to its breaking point. Originally created to house Iraqi refugees, it was constructed to support just 20,000 people, but now houses more than 70,000, nearly double capacity, even following recent expansion efforts which brought its capacity up to 40,000. So these numbers are huge, and these numbers are not necessarily just the refugees. Those are people who fought for Islamic State. Those are people who want the Islamic State to come back and govern the region that they are in and maybe the whole world. So thinking that those people need trials because some of them are war criminals. They did war crimes and big war crimes like genocide and raping women and children and keeping them as sex slaves for years. We heard all the stories from the women who escaped from there, the Kurdish women or other women who were taken by them and used for years, right? So we need a trial for them. And the Western countries, most of the time, they don't even accept their citizens who went there to come back to their country. We heard the examples from Netherlands, from Britain, that they did not accept those people back. regardless of women or men who joined the ISIS. So those people are in that region still. Those people are in that region with those ideas. So they need those trials. But for those trials, the people in Rojava need structure, need support from the international communities, right? Guidance, help from people who have information about how to do those war criminal trials. Those people need also some support for their food, for the shelter, and everything else. And they need rehabilitation, because we are talking about a mindset here, not just necessarily people who are leaving their countries for economic reasons or at war situations, but including, of course, in the war situation too, they need the rehabilitation and everything else. But in this case, I think in order to confine this threat and not to have this again, we need a very strong power from the international actors in the region in Northeast Syria to confine this problem and not to have any ISIS mindset or any ISIS actions again.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for going into that. It's like, I could say a lot about it from my own end, but maybe what I'll do is I'm seeing a lot of like very complicated analysis about the U.S.'s position in Syria. And you mentioned this a little bit before, previously in the interview, but many listeners of this show and the show itself take a stance against U.S. imperialism. Will you speak about this subject in whatever way makes most sense, and about the sort of more about the repercussions of the current U.S. pullback in the region?
Mm-hmm. Sure. That's a topic that is actually not easy for me to talk about, because I also totally agree. I'm against U.S. imperialism in the region, in everywhere. And we know what can happen after those U.S., not necessarily interventions even, like U.S. support, it can be humanitarian support, it can be military support, any type of support, because we know those supports can be also like very intertwined. So we are looking for a picture that currently the Kurds and the other ethnic actors in northern Syria, that's Rojava, currently they have the problem of those refugees. Some of them are the internal refugees, from the different parts of Syria. Some of the people are from Iraq who escaped from ISIS. Some of the people who were ISIS before, or their families and everything. So first of all, we have this, whatever we call its name, refugee problem or detainee problem, any type of name. So we have to see this. So this is happening there. They have to take care of those people's basic needs without the support of the international actors too, because there are so many economic issues happening with the autonomous regime in Rojava. For instance, international actors cannot open hospitals there currently, according to the report that I'm reading. To quote, it says,
Whoa.
For example, medical charities. Excuse me?
No, that's really surprising.
Yeah. For example, medical charities cannot work directly with the autonomous administration, meaning Rojava administration, meaning they cannot sponsor or support many of the hospitals and medical points inside the camp. So that does not necessarily mean that we cannot open hospitals, so I'm taking it back, but there are so many constraints that international actors cannot help sufficiently, and you're also talking about so many people, so there has to be a systematic way of international help. It doesn't need to be just small charity work. Second thing, we're looking for the threats from the Turkish side too. So Turkey has one of the biggest armies in the world. It's a part of NATO. And we know that Erdogan has been using the quote-unquote terror for his elections. We know that Erdogan has been using the security concept for the elections. And we also know what was the relationship, the very scary and not transparent relationship between some Turkish governmental figures with ISIS there. I heard stories that the ISIS fighters could pass the Syria-Turkish border while no one else was able to pass that border to get their medical help. We heard that they were able to pass to get help to see their family who are living in Turkey, for instance. We know that the people who got captured as being part of the ISIS from different countries, they want to go back to Turkey and they want a fair trial to happen in Turkey because they think that Turkey is the only country that can be fair to them. So, this is bringing questions of like, what is the relationship between Turkey and ISIS? I also know that there are journalists who want to be jailed, who were actually also jailed, for making the news of Turkish intelligence agencies' direct support to the region. And there was no explanation from the authorities in Turkey if this really happened, if they literally helped ISIS or not, right? And that, together with that, we're also thinking there was a big ethnic cleansing in that region. Everything fell down. This is a war zone for the last decade. People needed to establish their schools back. People needed to establish their resources back, their even trust to each other back. It's like we need to understand what is being in a war for a long time. People lost their family members in that war. I'm talking about like 11,000 Syrian Democratic Forces fighters were killed only in the Kobane siege during 2014. So we are talking about really, really big numbers, really, really big losses. So thinking about US imperialism in an ideological way, of course, that's very critical for any movement in the world. Any movement needs to look what are their relationships with the big imperial forces, right? Imperialism was the reason that Kurdistan was divided into 4 different pieces. But when we are looking at them, we also have to look at what is happening in there right now during the day. There were 2 bombings in the region today in Rojava from Turkish side. Let me find the news. If I'm not mistaken, I believe a couple of civilians were killed today by the Turkish army bomb in a city in Rojava. So we know what is happening here, and the name of the place is called Grespi, and Turkey has been sending bombs there for a couple of hours. So I totally agree with Kurdistan regime, any Kurdistan regime, and especially Rojava regime, because they want equality for women, they want anti-imperial politics, they want more egalitarian economic system that people are supporting each other with co-ops and everything, right? In a place like this, there is no space for imperialism, but to create that place, to keep that sustainability, we need to understand that those people are fighting against one of the biggest armies in the world and one of the most brutal ideology in the world. So we need to understand this is not going to happen just by itself. We need some parties that will keep the place as a tampon so that it's not going to be an active war zone. So because otherwise we're not going to be able to create what we want.
Yeah, I agree totally, and thank you for presenting an argument for this being a very complicated, you said it was like a tough question to answer because being an anti-imperialist, it's what we have to work with. So yeah, thank you for making that connection. So you talked about what is Turkey's stake in all of this, and you said that Turkey has already been bombing in Rojava and bombing in other places in northeastern Syria. But is there more to say about why they are doing this, or what might they be after in assaulting the land and assaulting the people in this way?
Yeah. So Turkey is doing this for so many different reasons. First of all, the ongoing hatred towards the Kurdish people, the Kurdish region, right? Turkey has been doing the similar things to its own Kurdish region, which is called Bakur, the east and southeast of Turkey, for decades, regardless of the president, regardless of the government. There were village burnings. People were forced to leave the city or the village or the region that they grew up, that their ancestors grew up. There was no government actually did any investments in the region so that people could find jobs and stay in their own region. The language was not officially but practically banned for decades. I don't know my mother language because it was not easy for my mother to speak her mother language in a public way, and I always told speaking Kurdish is not going to help me. I need to learn what is Turkish, which is the appropriate way of talking, right? Like as a child, you always believe what you hear from people around. Like I was always told, don't say that you're Kurd when you're going to school and all the other stuff. So there's an ongoing hatred towards Kurdish region, which goes back even the foundation of Turkish Republic being up. And this was happening in any region, in any country that Kurds were living. So it was also happening in the Kurds who are living in Syria, Rojava. It was also happening under the Iraq regime under the Saddam regime in Iraq. It was also happening, it has been happening in Iran. Recently, a couple of Kurdish people were also hanged were taken that penalty in Iran, right? So this has been an ongoing conflict in all the countries that the Kurdish people have been living. Their language was always a problem, their culture was always a problem, their existence was always a problem. Their region was trying to be abused, and they just wanted to be not being a problem for the overarching state that they are living under, right? They wanted to be assimilated in any country that they were in. And that is our fight, actually. We are not going to be assimilated. We are going to keep our language. We are going to keep our culture. We are going to go on like this. This is the fight that was bringing us until here. This was the fight that created Rojava, to keep our culture, to keep our language, to show that we are still here. We are not going to abolish just because those countries do not want our existence, also together with any other figures in the region, in the Middle Eastern region. So Turkey wants to change the demographics of that region, that Rojava, that it has been doing for its own Kurdish region, Bakur, for decades. They don't want a strong Kurdish existence on just the south border of Turkey. They are saying that this is a security threat to Turkey, but the same report that I have, it also says that, so in the border from Turkey to Syria, 30 times more shootings happen from the Turkish side compared to the Syrian side. So if there was a security problem, that would be vice versa. Secondly, Turkey wants to use this as a reason to justify, not Turkey, the government wants to use this as a reason to justify the economic problems that have been happening in Turkey. Erdogan has been in the government over 20 years. So they came, I believe, in 2001 with Abdullah Gül, in 2002, Erdogan came. Since then, the economy has been going bad. We had a so-called coup d'etat attempt in the recent years. So they were using this term securitization. They were not using it, but they were applying it, I believe, to their own system. So they were trying to bring security problems so that they can make expenditures, so that they can justify the decay in their economy, so that they can justify the decay in the education and everything else. And there is an organic tie between the Turkish government and ISIS. We don't know we don't know if ISIS is going to emerge again, and it's possibly going to emerge again with the U.S. pulling back soldiers from the region, because this was how it was created actually initially. When we think how ISIS got created in Iraq, after what it got created in Iraq, who was in the government then, who was where was U.S., after the Saddam regime, the turmoil with the U.S. in Iraq, to create its own security, to be self-sufficient for itself, and then suddenly we have the ISIS in front of us. So who can tell that this is not going to happen again? Because there is already a problem in the region, right? So Turkey, we know that even in my neighborhood, right, in Istanbul even, one of the biggest cities, and especially in the rural parts, there are ISIS cells that have been sleeping. There were people who did bombings. There were 3-4 bombings who were tied to ISIS in the last 5 years in Turkey. Last 10 years in Turkey. So we know that there's an organic tie between ISIS and Turkey. It can be related with oil. It can be related with using it as a resource against, any type of international agreement. Turkey has been using the Syrian refugees inside for a leverage point for European Union, right? Because they don't want the Syrian refugees to come there, and Syrian refugees some of them want to leave Turkey too, but they want to keep them there so that Turkey can use them for their political leverage against different countries or unions. So I believe Turkey has so many different reasons, Erdogan has so many different reasons to make this thing. He also knows that this is not going to bring any peace to the region. Everyone is sure that this is not going to bring any peace to the region. This is not a peace project. You don't do a peace project with war. You don't do a peace project with bombing villages that are civilians inside. Turkey did not even bomb the villages that it was sure that was full with ISIS soldiers. Why are they bombing villages right now? Why are they trying to make ethnic cleansing or changing the demography of Rojava right now? Why things are starting to be like normal? Why, when the people start to create their own economic regimes or judicial or any type of, like the basic livelihood things, why is it happening right now? Everything is going well. If you need to support, you can support with NGOs and other things. As I said, we need other type of stuff there. Like they said that they're going to open a university there. Those people, they only have the university, and that's not the first thing they need. They don't need imperial knowledge coming there and explaining and teaching their kids. Turkish education system is it's obvious, it's in front of us. Like it has been going really, really bad in the last decade. Even when I'm talking with the people on the streets, younger people, I realize that what is happening. Every time I go back to Turkey, I'm realizing what is happening. What happened to those people? Where is the critical mind? Where is the thinking? Where is the happiness of finding out something? People realize that the education system has been going really, really bad in Turkey for a long time. So Turkey just wants to use this war as a reason for Erdogan's existence, and people are going to die after this. People are going to die. Lots of people are going to die, and the stability in the region is going to go really, really bad. And this is going to be something really, really bad for Erdogan too, because we know he's falling. We know that his votes are falling, his support is falling. He's lost already one of the two biggest cities in Turkey, Istanbul and Ankara, and we know that these are like his last schemes, his last wars. But we want to stop this without it started, and it's already started today. But I hope with our actions, in the U.S. especially, Trump is going to reconsider this, and then people around him are going to understand that this is going to create a turmoil in the region that can cause ISIS to Daesh to open again, or even different type of ideologies like that to start again.
So you spoke about the Global Day of Action, and that's going to happen on October 12th. Will you speak about this and what you hope to see, and what can listeners sort of keep in mind about this day?
Of course. Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think that's one of the most important things right now. So the Global Day of Action for Supporting Rojava is going to be on the 12th of October, which is this Saturday. The Rojava friends, the people from the region, especially asked us to apply pressure, and we are having the meetings with the people from the region who have like political seats, let's say like that. So we are trying to find out how can we best support, because that's very important, right? To understand how can we support them. Just understanding things are going wrong, there is not necessarily a solution. In different countries, there are different type of like support systems. Currently, U.S. is one of the most important one because it is the one that's going to have the decision of leaving its army there or not. So in the U.S., the couple of things we can do. In that action on 12th of October, we can be in front of the Turkish embassy, although it's a Saturday, or any place that we can be. We can have emergency last-minute actions, last-minute demonstrations. We can go to the neighborhoods in our cities that they have people there, so we can walk there and talk with them, distribute flyers to them to explain what is happening and why we ask U.S. presence in the region. What can it cause at the end? Because we know U.S. was also affected with Daesh issue. We know that Europe was also affected with Daesh, the ISIS issue. And it's not just going to be the doomsday of the people who are in the region. These type of ideologies they're like big bugs. They spread all around. These type of ideologies, they don't stop where they are. So we need to understand that this has to be a global action against them, not necessarily just from the people who are in the region. And so we can go in front of the consulates, Turkish consulates, or we can go to the bigger square in the city that we are living in, even by ourselves, even one single person, we can sit down and create even small type of awareness. We can also go to callmycongress.com, call your Congress people and ask them to oppose Trump's decision, and call the White House to register your opposition. We need to use, although maybe this is not going to bring so much change, but we need to use all these democracy tools that the country that we are living in is giving to us, so that we can tell them what we want and what we don't want, to create some type of pressure towards them. Because if Trump is doing this, I read Trump's tweets, right? If Trump is constantly that we are doing this because we shouldn't have been there for a long time anyways, and we don't want this war for our people again. We want to be out of these type of like war zones. People can believe that. Really, people can believe that. But if we explain them, no, this is not Trump being against the war. This is not Trump trying to save U.S. Military forces. This is Trump leaving the region to Turkey and ISIS so that different soldiers will die, different civilians will die. So we need to explain to people why U.S. is, like the same question you asked, right? Some people are saying like why Kurds are in relation with the biggest imperialist force in the world, right? We need to explain them why. We need to explain them why, and we need to explain them why U.S. actually has to make that action of leaving their soldiers there to protect the people there. We also heard what happened in Bosnia before, right? After the genocide happened, there is no point of going there and saving the people. We see what can happen. We have been observing what has been happening in the region for years. People died because of their gender. People died because of their ethnicity. People died because of their religion. So we know what is going to happen. Our future is exactly the same with our past in the region, and maybe it's even worse than that. So why we are thinking that maybe something else is going to happen? We need to explain all those Trump supporters and non-Trump supporters why U.S. has to stay in the region as a tool for Kurds so that Turkey cannot eliminate the Rojava project. We can also go and sign petitions. Yeah, as I said, we can call the Congress people, whoever you can reach. It's definitely a pressure anyway. So even you are one person in the city that you're in, you can still create awareness. You can still change a couple of people's minds, and then we need to make this the big deal. We need to, because what Rojava was established for is actually what we have been dreaming for. So we shouldn't leave it alone when really, really bad things are going to come, because we can see them.
Thank you so much for going into that. And that is all the questions that I have. Thank you, Gönül, for your time and willingness to speak with us about this like very complicated issue that's going on right now. Is there anything we left out that you'd like to see included, or any words you would leave listeners with as a provocation or as a farewell?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and in a very, very short notice. So thank you so much for being very flexible. The last thing I want to say is the same thing again. I see Rojava as a baby that can grow into a strong autonomous region there, who can be an example to all the regions around it. We are always talking about what is happening in the region, the Middle East, where the women are not having so much rights, where the women have to be silent most of the time, where it's very complicated and we don't understand what's happening there, right? No, it's not like that. Rojava showed us that actually in a region like this, even during the wartime, you can have a governing system that gives rights to women, the same rights that it's giving to men, even more, so that women can understand, can take part in the politics, right? We know that Rojava wanted an ecological revolution because it understood that without understanding that we are actually killing the earth that we are living on, we are not going to come anywhere. Rojava understood that without the crops, the economy is not going to be a strong thing, because we need to produce together in solidarity for the people, with the people, and we need to consume it together, and we need to be sustainable about our consumptions. So Rojava told us so many things, especially women, especially children, and especially to the people who are defining themselves ecological. So I'm asking especially for them, but also everyone else, to understand that Rojava failed, to understand that this is basically meaning Turkish invasion in the region, Turkish government changing dynamics, changing demographics in the region, trying to take the Kurds from the region and make the region somewhere that it does not have these historical ties with the people who have been there for thousands of years. And we know that U.S. is not pulling back to give a chance to the region to define its own fate. We know that U.S. is doing it so that Turkey can decide Rojava's own fate. That's why we are asking people to take any action that they can take. It can be in the personal level, writing to your congressperson, talking with your friends, talking in the podcast, joining any protest, organizing any protest on the 12th, on this Saturday. And if anyone can take part, they can also go and be in the region with our people there too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and so much love and rage and solidarity from here in Asheville and from all around the U.S. for this situation. For on-the-ground reporting for the current Turkish invasion into Northeast Syria, you can go to the Rojava Information Center at rojavainformationcenter.com or at Rojava IC on Twitter. And there they update fairly regularly, so it's good to keep eyes on that if you are interested in keeping up with the situation. To support this Kurdish Cultural Center, you can go to kurdsofillinois.org, and there you can learn more information up to and including ways to get involved, contact them, and to donate if you care to.
Keçuhordin kahraman Şerdikün bu Kurdistan Jibo kuzaruk bekejiyan Hazırın bibin bakrevan Amışlo Afriko bani Amude derik heseki Tırbes bisere kaniye Bijir Rojava'yı Kurdistan'ı